Hey everybody, it's Ken here, and I'm going to put out a series of videos a couple a week over the next few weeks as we start to tackle some of these issues that we're dealing with right now due to this coronavirus. And so I'm going to give you kind of what I see, what we're doing as a company, and a lot of the conversations I've had with lots and lots of people really high up and people on the ground too that are actually dealing with this from a business standpoint, from a real estate standpoint. So the first thing that I want to point out is I believe that we're in a humanitarian crisis right now. I believe that, this is a human issue and that we need to actually stop the spreading. I think that's very, very, very important because I'm seeing lots of people out and about all the time. And, part of this spreading is obviously getting together in groups, even as painful as it is to be home. It's very, very important, I think, to help stop the spreading. So hopefully some of you are doing that now. And those that you aren't, please do. So here's where we are. And here's kind of, if you just follow the math and you take a look at the spread of the virus in Italy and China, for example, it peaks in about 4 weeks. And so what that means is that when China and Italy went on a lockdown, it kind of peaked in 4 weeks. Now, the numbers, we don't even need to go into those, but if that's the case, and in the U.S. it peaks in 4 weeks from the lockdown, that would mean from about mid-March till about mid-April, it would actually be peaking sometime in mid-April, maybe even perhaps toward the end of April. Okay, what that means is that for the next 4 to 6 weeks, we potentially could be on a lockdown. We potentially could be closed, and things could potentially get worse as we start to see these numbers continue to grow. So I think it's important that we all brace for financial hardship at least for the next 90 days. And I'm going to kind of walk you through why I think that's to be true. A lot of the businesses that I'm seeing right now are closing. They're trying to stay open for at least the next 2 weeks. But, the truth is that a lot of them don't have a lot of cash to stay open. And certainly if they don't have any revenue for whatever it is that they're selling or services, then of course they can't cover the expenses. In addition to that, their lease payments or whatever else they might have. So you're going to start to see a ripple effect of all that. And as you guys know, unemployment is very high already, and it's projected to go up to between 20 and 30% here over the next few months. And that is going to affect real estate and all kinds of things on a number of levels. But do expect that from now that the projections are that we could have at least 2 million cases in the United States in a 4 to 6 week period. And that's going to create a lot of disruption in the economy. So there's two things that are happening right now. One, we are definitely in a recession. And the recession is generally, it's the term is that it's an economic decline for at least 6 months. That's what a recession is. What the government's trying to do is they're trying to stop a depression, which is a much longer period of time. The only difference between the two is a time span. And as you guys probably have heard the word recession a lot, there's been a lot of recessions over the years. Some are very short, some are very long. So we don't know exactly where we are right now. But there's 3 issues to discuss, I think. One is the depth and length of the recession. 2 is monetary policy and liquidity by the Federal Reserve. That's another very big one. And 3, the impact of the financial stimulus. And we're starting to see these rolling out right now. But those are the 3 things that we don't really know what's going to happen for a while. But I can tell you already, I think that the government's done a pretty good job, so has the Federal Reserve, of trying to stimulate the economy as, everybody's kind of going through this together. And we are going through this together. The businesses that I see that are impacted the most are the airlines, lodging, retailers, and energy. And those are there are certainly others, but just think about those real quick. The airlines, they're facing potential bankruptcy. Obviously they're reliant on people buying tickets and flying everywhere. And, and then of course they're buying planes from people that are manufacturing them, just like you buy a car, let's say a Ford. There's Ford actually manufactures that car. Same with Boeing, for example. They manufacture planes, and a company like American Airlines buys those planes, and they usually buy them on a lease or some kind of term, just like you do your car in a lot of cases. So those lease payments are going to start trickling down to big businesses like Boeing, who coincidentally 2 weeks ago just drew $19 billion on their revolver, which is their line of credit, just to mitigate some of these shortfalls. So you're going to start to see big company names like American Airlines and Boeing, Marriott, Hyatt, all these companies that have big payrolls and big overhead and in a lot of cases payments on their land, on their hotels, etc. You're going to see a lot of these businesses have serious financial hardship over the next few months. And the reason why I start with that is because these are our employees, and everybody's wondering about real estate, which is exactly what this is about, is real estate. So those are employees. Those are people that buy houses. Those are people that buy things from a retailer. Those are people that rent from us. Those are people that refinance mortgages and all those kinds of things. And as the economy starts to contract or go into a recession, those people are going to be in serious financial hardship, and a lot of people are going to hunker down and save whatever cash they have. Now, the last estimate I looked at was that the American people only have 50% of them only have $500 in savings or less. So that means that most of these folks are not going to have a lot of means moving forward. So it's really, really important as landlords or stewards of real estate that we keep that in mind, and that we have some empathy and compassion on these folks, because they're going through a lot, just like we are. Okay, our circumstances might be a little bit different, but really not that much different. So there's three things that I think drive real estate, and I talk about these a lot. The first one is job growth. And as you guys know, right now, job growth is contracting. We're going into this high unemployment. You certainly are not going to see rate increases or anything like that. Right now, people are just hunkering down and trying to hold on to whatever they can. But if you're in any kind of those businesses that I just mentioned, or in the service business like a restaurant or whatever, you've probably already gotten laid off. And, because the person who owns that business or is paying that lease payment to the landlord, they're in trouble. So all these things are happening, and we don't know exactly when those things are going to come back. So job growth is a big part of why real estate continues to grow. That's gone. The second one is population movement. As you guys know, like I live in Arizona, have people in Florida, a lot of these baby boomers, people that are retiring or moving to some of these states. Well, I can tell you, in our 10,000 apartments, most people that were on notice and are moving or even relocating for jobs have reversed all of that. And now they're hunkering down, staying where they are, and they're trying not to go anywhere. And so, population growth is a big deal, especially as it relates to, an economy. So if a lot of people are moving to Phoenix, for example, they're moving here for either retirement or for jobs or whatever it might be. Those things are all put on hold at the moment. And so population growth or movement is also something that is really, really off right now. I think the Fed's done a great job on is cheap money. So, as you guys saw, we've lowered interest rates. Unfortunately or fortunately, we're already very, very, very low. So a lot of these interest rates are, you hear they're lending at like zero. The interest rate, the Federal Reserve is lending at zero. Now there's a reason for that. And it's not zero, as you guys know. I mean, there's a long-term rate and a short-term rate, and we don't have time to get into all that. But the truth is that banks are in the business of lending money. And so what's happening is, for example, we just locked on a 2.75% loan, 30-year amortization, 10-year interest only on our property. So money's really cheap. And the reason that they're lending right now is because they want the monies to start moving into the economy. And so cheap money is already here, and that could potentially help a lot of people. But what we need are more of these monetary policies and liquidity in the system so that the small businesses and the people can actually get that money. And that's why President Trump was talking about, this $1,000 or $1,200 per person check. It's because it just gives them kind of a short-term jolt for whatever it is that they might be going through right now. So we will see the impact of these financial stimuluses and what they will be. I think they'll be rolling out over the next couple of months. And so we will see exactly what that does. But the whole idea that the government's trying to do is mitigate this recession so that it doesn't go to a long-term depression, which, as you guys probably know, can go 5 to 10 years potentially, and then it would really be bad. And of course, this is a worldwide issue. So here's what I see in the short term. I see my tenants having a real hard time being able to pay rent for the next 90 days. So as a company, we're really hunkering down. We're going to try to work with everybody that we can. Some people are in the right business right now. Some people are in healthcare and they're working all the time. Some people work for, online retailers, and, some people work for online companies that they can do a lot of their revenue from home. Others do not. And so it's a case-by-case basis. And, we're approaching each one individually as they come in based on this hardship. But our goal is not to displace anybody from their homes right now while they're going through this, because that would be the worst thing that we could ever do. The challenge that we have as a landlord is, of course, that a lot of times we owe somebody above us. We owe a mortgage to a bank, or in the case of like a restaurant, they own a lease payment to a landlord, and then the landlord owes that to the bank or whoever the financial institution is. And so it's a trickle effect all the way up. So I would expect that we're going to start to see some fiscal stimulus around those kinds of things and some leniency on the bank side, because the banks do not want this real estate back. I can assure you of that. I went through this in 2001. I went through this in 2008. And, we ended up buying a lot of real estate back from the bank, and they do not want real estate. It's not good for a bank to actually take property back. So I would expect that we're going to start to see a lot of things around that. Although, as just like you guys, banks are independent, a lot of them. A lot of them are going to set their own policies and do their own thing as it pertains to whoever their loans are with. So my suggestion to you guys is to communicate. Number one, you need to communicate to your tenants, you need to communicate to your investors, you need to communicate to your landlords, and you need to communicate to employees, no matter where you are on that spectrum. Because I think that transparency is super important right now, to be able to tell people exactly where you are, find out exactly where they are, and try to work with everybody while we go through this. The worst thing you can do is not communicate. So anybody that's based something on being higher next year or next month or next week in any way, I think is in jeopardy. So on the multifamily side, if you bought something that was a big value add play and you just closed on it within the last 6 months, I think you're in trouble, because you're probably not going to get those value add rents. And you probably raised a bunch of money, and you probably have promised the future value of multifamily to be higher than it was when you bought it. And while that model worked over the last few years, I think things are very different for how I explained before. So if your business was based on hype or marketing, and you're getting people together and you're raising capital and you're doing all those kinds of things, those days are over. As Warren Buffett said, you really find out who's naked once the tide goes out. And right now what's happening is the tide is definitely going out. This is good in some respects, because Multifamily was getting bid up. Warehouse was getting bid up. A lot of this real estate was getting bid up because of the amount of money in the system. So that's all changing. As a company, we stopped all value adds and renovations and upgrades and anything that we're doing at the moment, just temporarily, to find out kind of where we are. We're just trying to be heavy in cash, because I think that's what's going to happen is the people who are heavy in cash are going to do the best. In other words, if you have cash reserves, whatever that might be, it's going to get you through the tough times, and we're definitely going through some tough times. Now, I called one of my friends the other day. He's not in the real estate at all. And I said, how you doing on your business? He said, I've got a year of cash to be able to cover my business and my employees. So his plan is to keep everyone, but not everyone's capitalized like that. And not everybody's thought of that. And so sometimes if you're, let's say, a small nail salon or, a dry cleaner or whatever, you might not be heavy in cash. You might have all kinds of other things going on. Maybe you just got a loan, who knows what. And so you're going to start to see all kinds of varying degrees of businesses, some that are heavy in cash, that are kind of weathering these tough times, and others that are super tight that might be shutting their doors. And so it's going to be all over the map. Time will tell. It's based on a business-to-business decision and how they ran their business, or potentially when they started it, or how long they've had it, or the overall financial health. So we're stopping all of those, any kind of upgrades or any kind of CapEx. We were doing value adds at our own company on property that we owned 10 years ago. We stopped all those, because we believe that people are, as they start to hunker down, are going to want some of the units back at the old prices, potentially when we bought it. And so why would we upgrade a bunch of units right now when we can offer, some are brand new and some back at the old prices? And so we're doing that. The other thing is, I think you need to just take a nice evaluation on what it is that you guys could potentially cut. So you should be looking at all your personal expenses, whatever that might be. And if I were you, I would cut everywhere that you can at the moment, because I think preservation of cash for individuals is basically what's going to get you through this. You need to build up the reserves as much as you can. The thing that I wanted to end on is, you guys, this is the time where we all need to work together. We all need to be super collaborative, and you need to work with your tenants. You need to work with your residents. They're scared too. They're scared of the future. They're scared of getting kicked out. I'm sure they're concerned with even saying, I can't pay rent. So these are all things that you guys are going to have to get into the details on, and you're going to have to work with each resident individually and figure out exactly what they can and can't do. But the last thing, it doesn't help anybody if you have a vacancy. It's actually going to get worse. You're better off to have somebody in there that's a good tenant and work with them than you are to have a vacant unit and try to fill it up later when everybody's suffering through these big job losses. So just remember, everybody's scared too. We'll all get through this together, and appreciate you watching. And I'm going to do another one in a couple days as we start to see more and more changes. And thank you again, and we'll talk to you soon.